Discuss Kosovo a little deeper. I'm joined by Omar Ashour, who is the head of the Security Studies program at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. And joining us from London is Klaus Jurgens, who is a contributor at the Next 24 news website. Omar, I'm going to start with you. Why did Kosovo find itself such a susceptible breeding ground for extremists?
Well, there are several reasons for that. First, Kosovo, if you looked at how many fighters we had in Syria and Iraq joining Daesh or Al-Qaeda, compared to its number of population, so it's the largest provider of foreign terrorist fighters in Europe. Even compared, it's 8 times the rate of France, for example, which has the largest. So why has that happened? Well, there are several reasons. Some of them are demographics. Basically, Kosovo is a very young population. We are talking about over 44% are under the age of 25.
That makes them young and impressionable?
That's one, but also with a very low educational levels. So 62% of the adult population has low education rates. You have also, this is a male population, 1.1 to 1 female, 1.1 male for 1 female, so a lot of male population. But also you have the lowest human development index in Europe, in Kosovo as well, and it's the poorest country in Europe. Add to that a bit of an investment that happened on the Saudis, especially after 1998. And we know now that the Saudi Joint Relief Committee, which was invested in so many primary schools in the country, about 98 primary and secondary schools, 13 charities, over 100 mosques unlicensed. Most of them were preaching a very sectarian, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic brand of Wahhabi Islam, which is preached by Saudi Arabia. So there's been an investment on that, and we were talking about a ripple effect from 1998 till probably 2015, 2016, when the government started to pay attention. So we have like all this, the right mix basically.
Yeah, it was ripe for it then, wasn't it?
To a certain degree, I'm not surprised by that. But also there are ways to deal with this. There's, you can levy that. Obviously, the government now is having a counterterrorism strategies that started in 2018, pretty much modeled on the British counterterrorism strategy. So all the 4 strands, the prevent, the pursue, the protect, and then the responses. So it's very much modeling the British one. And
we'll get a little bit more into that as we move on, but I wanted to take you back to what you were talking about Saudi Arabia's influence. In 2016, that was really one of the main reasons that was blamed for this rise in extremism and radicalisation. What kind of influence and impact do you think Saudi Arabia is having on the community now, currently, in Kosovo?
Currently, I think these activities were curbed, but the damage was done. There was no surprise that out of the 11 imams, mosques, basically leaders, preachers in the mosques, the 11 that were arrested because of recruiting foreign fighters and preaching violent extremism, 8 of them were educated in Saudi Arabia, out of the 11. And as I mentioned, the brand of Islam that was being promoted, it's very different from the local Kosovar Islam, which is very close to the kind of Turkish common folk Islam here and in the Balkans in general. It's less, in many ways, it's very different from the whole Wahhabi worldview, which is very, very xenophobic in a way, looking down on the other, very misogynist, very xenophobic, but basically, and then the idea of violence is very close to it. There's a legitimization of using violence against the other, being religious and so forth. And that was invested in because there was money behind it, and the money came from Saudi Arabia, whether it with official or with non-official, with no official approval, but it came, and the damage was done, and we tried to do years and years of damage that was done in Kosovo, and the poverty and the underdevelopment, and it's a post-conflict society in many ways. All of that helps, because some of the recruits that we know had some significant guerrilla military training before. So all this helped them to create the current situation.
Klaus, I'm going to throw it over to you in London. You've just heard Omar talk about trying to undo some of that damage and what damage has already been done. What role is Turkey playing in trying to temper that Saudi influence in Kosovo?
Well, first of all, good day. Thank you for having me. I would start by saying that Turkey is actually exercising a very positive approach. What my esteemed colleague just mentioned from the Saudi Arabian side, I think Turkey is doing exactly the opposite. Turkey is indeed engaging in investments. Turkey is having a kind of soft approach in what some of my colleagues in the media recently discussed, that Turkey is engaging in a form of neo-Ottomanism, wants to put Kosovo under its rule, wants to engage in untoward influence. I would wholeheartedly disagree. Foreign policy is, of course, always about promoting one's interests, but I refer to Turkey's foreign policy as a kind of 360 degrees foreign policy. And Kosovo, due to the history, due to the Ottoman history, yes, indeed, close links, close ties. But this doesn't mean that today Turkey wants to colonize Kosovo. Exactly to the contrary. And I'm not only referring to the setting up of plans for a new mosque, for example, which made, of course, headlines outside Turkey and Kosovo as well. I'm talking about investment. I'm talking about various industry sectors, only to mention construction, and exactly what my esteemed colleague just mentioned: poverty, education, jobs for young people. And of course, when we come to de-radicalization, once you have a stable country and a stable democracy, once you have opportunities for young people, men and women, the danger of radicalization, hence Turkey has not only this aim of supporting Kosovo, but at the same time will do a great job in actually helping to de-radicalize young people who ill-fatedly want to engage in terror.
When you talk about
Yes,
this
please,
investment that Turkey has been making in Kosovo, though, you did allude to it there. There have been some criticism about this being sort of a soft power play. You can understand why maybe it is being criticised in that respect, can't you? And how do you see it so differently?
Well, I'm not seeing it differently because I'm definitely a friend of modern Turkey. And this is not about my viewpoints, but this is about analyzing Kosovo and Turkey. I think it depends from which angle you look at it. What annoyed me a little bit, if I may use this non-diplomatic term, but of course I studied developments before coming here and follow developments almost for the 10 years since the independence of Kosovo, and Turkey was one of the first countries to recognize it. By the way, the United Kingdom did so too. If you compare the 10 years and the attitude of Turkey towards Kosovo, taking all 500 years of Ottoman rule into account, taking into account 95% of the population are Muslim, taking the fact into the account that there is, of course, an Albanian element of history, which always has to be remembered, I think it is only normal that Turkey engages in, you mentioned this soft dimension, I call it a positive soft dimension. It would not be possible to do it unless the government and the people in Kosovo actually want it. There were two points for consideration recently. Should the architect for a new mosque use a design which is basically a copy of a Turkish design? Should it be local architects? And there were indeed questions about the arrest or extradition of a number of terrorists wanted by the government in Turkey. Yes.
It's going to be interesting to see how that does play out now and how Kosovo does deal with that. But we're going to have to leave our discussion there. Thank you both so much for joining us on Straight Talk.